Thank you, Minnie, for letting me know how to pronounce your name. Cheers for that. Okay. We are live on YouTube. All right.
We are live, yes.
Distinguished guests, thank you very much for taking your time to join the next Architecture of Philanthropy, hosted by the African Youth Philanthropy Network, where we are unleashing young people to lift up to philanthropy. For this series of the next Architecture of Philanthropy, we are looking at the digital features of African philanthropy. We understand that the landscape is changing. We are no longer doing things traditionally. However, we are taking the direction of things being enabled by tech. This conversation is going to be moderated by one and only Taylor. Taylor is going to take us through this conversation and let us know the perspectives that are there. Our provocation is going to be given by Kene, and I honestly can't wait to hear this provocation because this provocation is going to make us deep into this conversation. So some of the talking points that we have for today's session, we're going to look at how technology is reshaping traditional African giving and community solidarity. Also, are Africans emerging philanthropic tools and platforms locally built or largely imported and adapted? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves. What can informal philanthropy learn from informal giving traditions, diaspora giving, and mutual aid networks? Does the digitalization of philanthropy empower African communities towards autonomy or risk creating new dependencies? And last but not least, how are young people leveraging technology to mobilize resources, strengthen movements, and to build philanthropic movements? Now, this is the moment that we've been waiting for. Taylor, please take us through this roundtable conversation. We'd like to get insights from every discussants that are there. Please remember to introduce our discussants that are in this session. Over to you, Taylor.
Thank you so much, Michael. It is such an honor to be part of this. I noticed I checked back on the series that you've been doing, the past 6 series, and I believe this is the 7th one, and there's still the last one. As I was going through each, and I tried to listen to the previous ones, almost all of them, and I noticed that I believe that you've already built a blueprint throughout this conversation, and I'm excited to see what comes out of all this conversation with what you're building. So as introduced, my name is Shandikani Taylor Mfamadi, and I'm a founder of AfriNextGen magazine. That's a conversation for another day. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us from. I think just to give maybe some room information to say, make sure that you're engaging. We don't just want this to be a one-sided a conversation from my side and the panelist, but make sure that you're engaging with us. Make sure that you're sharing your thoughts on the chats and also giving us those reactions. And also to our panelists, I do hope that we know we only have, I think, 90 minutes. So let's respect time. If you're as passionate as me, sometimes you want to explain, you want to say so much, please let's try not to do that. Let's make sure that we are giving each other enough time to learn and to contribute. So let's get to this conversation, to this important conversation. As mentioned, as I was going through those conversations, the previous one, I think I noticed one pattern, which was to say that across Africa, giving has never been a foreign concept. It has been something that we practiced long before the crowdfunding became a part of us, digital wallets, mobile money, or even these online campaigns that we see nowadays. Maybe the concept philanthropy, it's something that is new in the African concept, but the entire practice, it's something that Africans have always practiced long before. And I think for me, I believe this conversation is as important and timely because yesterday I attended a lecture. It was talking about African philanthropy, and one idea really stayed with me from the keynote speaker that I would love to share with all of us. So she urged us that Africa does not lack generosity. What we lack are the institutions and the systems that are capable of organizing that generosity into a larger scale. So as we discuss today, the digital features of African philanthropy, I would love for us to explore whether technology is helping us solve these challenges or whether it is creating a new challenge on its own. So I do hope that even my question will be answered throughout this conversation. And we will start with someone who's going to provoke us, someone who's going to challenge maybe what we come here thinking that we know and understand. And the person is Kaene. He's unfortunately unable to join us, but we will play his video, maybe just a bit introduction about who he is. He's a founder of Change Africa and then a recognized youth engaged and sustainability leader from Botswana. His work spans from public policy, youth development, renewable energy, and leadership. And he's passionate about helping Africans' next generation shape the continent's future. So thank you so much. I believe there's a video of him that is going to help us and take us through this conversation. Thank you.
Prize called Change. Good afternoon, Sanbanani. In our language, we say Dumelang. My name is Kaene Disepo. I'm the founder of a social enterprise called Change Africa. I think first, allow me to really begin by doing what, the one thing actually that a provocateur is paid to do, being slightly ungrateful for the question that I have been lended. We've been asked to discuss the digital futures of African philanthropy. And I think in as much as it's such a great topic, I would like to refuse some of the assertions that have been made and perhaps assumptions, not because they're wrong, but because they smuggle two assumptions into this room that I'm not really willing to let pass unchallenged. I think the first is that philanthropy is the right word for what Africa actually does. The second is that digital is a direction of travel around and also a road that by definition leads somewhere we want to go. Now, let me take the first word. Philanthropy, I think for me, in many ways, is a borrowed container. When we say philanthropy, we're actually reaching for a northern category, the lone benefactor, the foundation, the gift that flows downward from those who have to those who have not. And then we congratulate ourselves for being warmer, more communal, more, in our word, we say boto or ubuntu, inside actually someone else's box. But let's look closely at what we actually do. So for example, a burial society is not really a charity, it is an insurance. A motelo or a Stockville is not generosity. It is a contract with members, with rules and consequences for the ones who do not pay. In Botswana, we have something called Letsema, which was really mutual aid with a lot of calloused hands. The whole village would arrive to plow one's family field on the understanding that the next season, the field would be yours. And we also have another thing called Mafisa, where with Mafisa is the one that I really want to maybe stress a little bit here. Our grandparents understood that you could actually loan a man your cattle so that his children could drink the milk and his plow could break the soil, while the head itself actually remained yours. And remained, in fact, was a relationship rather than a transaction. So now, my question is, which donor platform understands Mafisa? Which giving app actually knows the difference between transferring a cow and actually lending one? So here is my first provocation. I assert that solidarity is horizontal and clarity is vertical. And much of what we are calling the digitization of African philanthropy is actually the quiet work of tilting the first into the second, taking systems that made us unanswerable to each other and rebuilding them so that we are answerable upward to a donor, to a dashboard, to a definition of impact written somewhere we have never been. On whether the tools are locally built or imported, that is a trap. And in many ways, I don't want to step in it. I know that we're going to be tempted to spend an hour debating whether our platforms are African made or borrowed. In my honest opinion, it is a wrong fight. The interface may well be local. The rails rarely are. A Gaborone giving platform can still run on foreign cloud, foreign payment infrastructure, foreign donor management software, and most definitely, or most actually decisively, foreign capital arriving with foreign reporting requirements attached. So sovereignty, in many ways, was never a question of who designed the app. It is a question of who owns the donor relationship and who actually owns the data. And by that measure, most of what we proudly call African platforms are translation layers, machines for making African giving legible to Northern funders. Now, in many ways, that is actually not a tool of autonomy. That, I'm afraid, is a better leash. When the giving is African, but the dashboard reports to DC, to Delaware, to Paris, we should at least be honest about the beneficiary, about who the beneficiary is actually answering to. The dependency question, and I want to be careful here because I do this work quite a lot. I spend a great deal of my time inside monitoring and evaluation for projects. One of the leading projects that we have at Change Africa is actually called C-Suite, where we convene executive networking platforms, where we have ministers, private secretaries, CEOs, heads of international organizations, and we discuss what is called the C-Suite Legacy Blueprint, where essentially we craft legacy projects by answering one fundamental question. In 200 years, what is the name and how would you like to be remembered? So inside that very architecture lies accountability. But let me indict my own profession here before anyone else does. The dependency that should frighten us is actually not dependency on technology. It is a dependency on measurement regimes. Every dashboard, every theory of change, every impact metric is a quiet instrument for making African work answerable to someone else's idea of what counts. We did not digitize philanthropy. We digitized the audit. And notice, the accountability only ever runs in one direction. And we've had this conversation so many times. That is the grantee who reports to the funder. The small reports to the large. The near reports to the distant. So where is the platform that rates the foundation? Where is the dashboard on which a village actually scores a donor? Where is the log frame that holds a program officer, say in Geneva, accountable to a grandmother, say in Gaborone? It does not exist. And its non-existence is not an oversight. The asymmetry is the product. Now, let me give you the number one number that should reorganize this entire conversation. While we sit here asking how formal philanthropy might learn from the diaspora and from mutual aid, the diaspora has already built the largest digital giving infrastructure on this continent, and it owes our sector nothing. Remittances to Africa reached roughly $100 billion in 2025, close to 6% of the continent's GDP, and actually surpassing official development assistance, which sat near 42 billion and outpacing most foreign direct investment. And unlike aid, which bends to the political weather of donor capitals, and I think we all know because we have watched since 2025, when a stroke of an American pen sent tremors through every development office on this continent. It is the remittances that did not flinch. They held steady through the pandemic. They held steady through the cuts. The diaspora did not wait for a convening. It did not commission a log frame. It needed a phone number. and a reason. Harambe was crowdfunding before Silicon Valley discovered actually the word. We did not lack the technology of solidarity. We lacked the patience to be left alone with it. So when formal philanthropy says it wants to learn from mutual aid, let us name the posture precisely. It is the anthropologist studying the tribe, wanting to extract the mechanism, the trust, the velocity, while keeping the power. That, I'm afraid, is not learning. That is enclosure. And now let me bring this home, because Botswana has already lived the parable we are too polite to name. This country built its entire identity on one refusal. We refuse to export our diamonds raw. Some point or another. We insisted against London, against the weight of a century, that the stones be sorted, cut, and actually polished here on our soil by our hands. We called it beneficiation. We made it a national doctrine. So when I ask in this room, the only question I truly came to ask, have we beneficiated our generosity? Or are we simply still exporting it raw? Shipping out our solidarity to be packaged abroad, measured abroad, branded abroad, and sold back to us as best practice at a premium. Say it again. Have we beneficiated our generosity, or are we still exporting it raw? Shipping out our solidarity to be packaged abroad, measured abroad, branded abroad, and sold back to us as best practice at a premium. Because here is the pattern, stated plainly: money that arrives free but with conditions, money that distorts local incentives, money that hollows out the accountability between a leader and the people he serves and replaces it with accountability to a distant office, money that makes the local answerable to the foreign. We already have a name for that pattern on this continent. We call it the resource curse. I'm simply suggesting that philanthropy can be a resource curse too, and that digital philanthropy may be its most efficient, most frictionless, most polite version yet. On young people and technology, I don't really expect to end on the easy hope. We will be tempted to close with a warm note about young Africans using their phones to mobilize resources and demand accountability. And in many ways, that is actually true. But here, the other half of the sentence. The very tools that let a young person raise money also let a funder surveil them. The very dashboards we celebrate as transparency overwhelmingly discipline the small actor and leave the large one untouched. So young Africans, they're actually not short of digital tools to raise money. We are drowning in them. We are simply short of power. The power to set the terms on which the money arrives, the power to define what counts as impact, the power to be trusted with being tracked. Give me that platform. Build me that one platform, the one that actually points the camera upward. So now let me hand the fire to the room, and I promise you, I'm drawing to a close here. As one provocateur should. I'm not actually here to control the burn. I'm only here to start it. So I will leave you with 3 sentences, and then I promise I'll get out of your way. The first one is, we did not digitize philanthropy. We digitized the audit. Second one is, solidarity is horizontal, whilst charity is vertical. And we should watch very carefully which one the platform is quietly turning the other into. And the question really was never whether the tools are imported. The question is whether the trust is being exported. We have given on this continent for thousands of years without an app. We really have. And the question before us is not how technology will finally teach Africa to be generous. It is whether technology will let Africa stay generous on its own terms, in its own tongue, answerable at last to itself. In many ways, I say thank you. Have a great session. And I hope I gave you some points of provocation. I kid you not, I'm a great person. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. I think I've never encountered someone who's so provoking with such smile and like he's not doing anything. The entire time I was just looking there thinking he's coming better, but then he kept on going deep. So I think this was a good way of starting this conversation, but most importantly, it also challenges how we're going to have this empowering conversation and how we're going to navigate this conversation. As you heard him, even from the beginning when I was mentioning that philanthropy is not something new to us, I want to believe that the concept is something new, but generosity has always been a part of us as Africans. And I couldn't agree more to say that this digitization, we're not really digitizing philanthropy, but we're digitizing solidarity and in how we as Africans practice our ways and do things. So this is a matter of us having this conversation and see what we come out of with what as young people and as people that are now owning the table and having to be part of this important conversations. So thank you so much. I'm being given an opportunity to introduce our panelists, but I wouldn't want to do everyone injustice. I would want for each and every one of you to introduce yourselves. I will start with Paul. You are just going to briefly introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what exactly do you do. And in 1 minute, I would love to hear when you hear the phrase, the digital features of African philanthropy, what was the first thing that came into your mind? Because when Tembi reached out to me and the first thing before she explained anything, she just told me this, the theme is digital features of African philanthropy. And a lot of things were going on in my mind. So I would love to hear from each and every one of you what really comes into your mind, and that will help us set the tone of this conversation. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much. My name is Paul Onyweke. I'm joining in from Nairobi, Kenya. And for the last few years, I've been working with digital platforms specifically focused on African civil society, and have been running the largest digital platform for civil society organizations in Africa, with over 5,000 members from 52 African countries. So I have extensive experience dealing with civil society organizations from different geographic regions of the continent. When I heard of the title Digital Futures of African Philanthropy, the first thought was how we can use the internet to simplify giving. And for me, that is critical because there are some things that the provocateur has said that I do not necessarily agree with, and I'll get into that a bit later. But for me, using the internet is critical in simplifying how I give to my neighbor, because the term philanthropy might be new, but generosity is inherently African. We believe in giving, not necessarily just downwards, but also upwards. Because when we talk about Harambe, when we talk about giving when there is tragedy, it's not necessarily giving downwards, it's also giving upwards. Not necessarily because there is less up there, but because we believe in the aspect of sharing in the little that we have. So the digital aspects, the digital futures of philanthropy for me is, number one, simplifying giving. I can send $5 to my friend who is in need or who needs a top up to buy something at the cost of less than 20 cents which in the past would not have been possible. For my parents to do that 10, 15 years ago, they would have had to send it via courier and it would take 3 or 4 days. So for me, it is a simplification of giving and also the simplification of generosity in our generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was hoping you hold it in there because we will need to get deeper into that conversation, especially how technology is actually reshaping this philanthropy, because we understand that, of course, this is not an old concept when it comes to African concept, and perhaps it's being sold to us to believe that this is something new, this is something for the wealthy, so to say, because that's how we grew up believing that when you hear the term philanthropy, you believe in that concept. So thank you so much. I also didn't want to add much from what Kaine was saying, because I knew that some of the concepts you guys are going to disagree with, and we'll get deeper into that as we converse. Now I will move to Emmanuel. Can you also please introduce yourself and tell us what came into your mind first when you hear of this concept or theme?
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Chandukane, Mr. Paul. Thank you so much for also, and Mr. Kaine, thank you so much for leading us with this opening session remarks. I'm Emmanuel Njang from Botswana. Professionally, I'm trained into real estate. I hold a real estate, BCom into real estate. That's what I do. But I chose a different path where I chose to work with people. I'm a coach, certified as a life coach, and I do work as a organization development consultant, working with organizations and leaders that are in the transition. And also, I'm an author of 3 books on mindset and abundance. That's the work that I do. And lastly, I serve as the business, agriculture, innovation, and entrepreneurship cluster for SIOF, which is the Southern Africa Youth Forum. So we are part of SIOF as the cluster assistant for the business cluster. And then basically, a lot came in when I heard about this work and this word, digital futures of philanthropy, African philanthropy. So much came into my mind. And then I thought, how do we stop using, or how do we stop thinking digital future and start to think digital present? Because you are living it. This is the 4th or 5th industrial revolution that we are speaking of. We are not speaking of something of the future. So we should start to think of it as a digital present. And then what is in there that accelerate what has been there already? You and I can agree that philanthropy is not a new word. It's not a new thing. It might be a word or how we name things or how we say things as individuals. But this thing has been there for a very long time. In Botswana, in Africa, it's Ubuntu. In other places, they call it, and crowdfunding, all these things, like what Paul has been saying. How can I make things easier for goods or services to reach to the next person? How can I make it easy for my parents to receive money and go and buy relish or buy food without necessarily having to wait for 3 days? That's the way technology came in. And then we shouldn't be thinking of it as a digital future. We are living in times where we say, should it be easy for me to get access to this? I think we're going to go more into all that. So that, to me, is when we started to speak of digital future of philanthropy, I started to say digital presence of philanthropy in Africa. And how is it able or enable us to do this work of philanthropy towards, whatever initiative that we may be doing? So I think more of it, we're going to be tapping into it as we go through these discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really love the perspective that you brought to us, that we should stop thinking about it as something of the future, because we are already living it. And indeed, it is already a part of us. So thank you so much. I'm going to have to hold you there. And then as we continue, we will expand on that conversation. There was someone who raised their hand. I want to believe if you have a question or something to add, you can do that in the comment section, and then we will see how to navigate around that. Now we'll be moving to you, Kelechi.
Thank you so much. My name is Kelechi Ali. I'm from Nigeria. I'm CEO of Befixit and Technology Solutions Limited, registered in the USA and in Nigeria as well. We provide solutions for organizations, including philanthropy organizations, and we have been doing this for the past 5 years. We've worked with several organizations within West Africa mostly, and then other parts of Africa. Now, when we talk about the digital future of African philanthropy, just like Emmanuel said, he took it out from my mouth. We're already living the future. It's not going to happen. It's already happening. Now, it's more about how we're going to control it, how we're going to be in charge of the digital presence of African philanthropy. And then I'm going to throw more light on this when we start discussing. But then the digital presence is here. I don't think there's any technology that is not present currently in Africa. The only problem will be the distribution of the technology, but we already have what it takes to be in the digital future of African philanthropy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I already love the 10 that this conversation is taking. So let's get straight to this conversation because we've already established that technology is here to help us reshape this concept of philanthropy or this act of generosity that has always been a part of us as Africans. So I think I will get straight into the question. I will start with you, Paul, to say, from your work supporting civil society organization across Africa, how is technology reshaping traditional African giving and community solidarity? What are those trends or patterns that you have seen specifically from the work that relates to what you do?
Thank you, Shandokani. The power of technology is immense. That's something that I think all of us will agree on. And the internet has completely reshaped how we interact with each other and how we interact even with the companies that we are dealing with the organizations that we're dealing with. It has completely reshaped that. I'm pretty sure that a majority of us in this discussion right now probably applied for the jobs that we're doing on the internet, and we did not send anything via post, via mail. So the position of technology is quite critical. I'll give an example of an organization that I met 2 years ago at a conference in Arusha. It was led by this incredible woman who has been serving in that organization for the last 10 years. So this organization, the lady is around 50, 55 years old, and they offer psychological assistance to women who have faced GBV in the past. So it's incredible work, the work that they do. You cannot doubt the value of the work that they do and the value of that organization to the community. However, the only online presence that this organization has is a Facebook page. So if I want to give to organizations, if I'm passionate about organizations that assist people who have gone through GBV, and I'm looking for them on the internet, they will probably not feature anywhere in the Google searches. Why? Because their online presence is only one. It's just a Facebook page. There's nothing more than that. They do not have a website. They do not have any other social media pages other than the Facebook page that they have. This organization is run by this woman and 3 other people. So they are understaffed, chronically understaffed. So they do not have a comms person who can increase their online presence. It's just her and 3 other volunteers. Now, I'm giving this example because when we are giving in this age and we want to give to an organization, then we're probably going to use the internet. And for such organizations, they come in at a handicap because they are better staffed organizations on the internet. And when we want to give, we'll probably find the same 10 organizations over the next 5 years because of the resources that they have and their ability to maintain an online presence. So for such organizations, it's almost impossible for us to find them. Their visibility is almost zero because of their inability to maintain a steady online presence. So the trends and patterns that I'm seeing over the due to the work that I've been doing is that, number one, from the data that we have, less than 40% of civil society organizations have a website. Most of them, their only social presence on the internet is a Facebook page that is probably updated every other quarter. So it's probably not updated on a week-by-week basis. And mind you, these organizations have activities going on every other day. So they're probably doing a capacity building program. They're probably going to rescue a woman who is a victim of GBV somewhere, but they do not have the ability to keep updating this because they're so engrossed in their work. They do not have the time or the know-how of how to keep an online presence. And the result is they're probably going to be, for the longest period of time, they're not going to get consistent funding, whether it's from the community or whether it's from a funder who is looking to fund such programs. So the pattern over such a long period of time, let's say 5-10 years, is that money will keep flowing into the organizations that have a stronger online presence, the same organizations that have been funded over the last 10-15 years are the same ones that will keep getting funded, while the organizations in the rural areas that do not have a strong online presence will not get this funding from, whether it's from a major funder, whether it's from a community. And when I talk about a community in this sense, it's no longer geographic, because communities have expanded also because of the internet. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm also seeing someone edit something very important in the comment section to say that from what you are giving as an example, digital futures make sense, because I think we were mentioning that we are living the present. So maybe for those people who are still in their homes and they still don't have this presence, some people, especially old people as well, not in a bad word, but to say they're still resistant to social media, they're still resistant to technology. So maybe we are the ones that are supposed to equip them. And maybe just to before I move on to the next person, maybe to follow up with you, I would love to know in 1 minute, please, to say, are digital tools strengthening community trust, or are they changing the very nature of how people relate to one another?
I think digital tools are definitely increasing community trust. Number one, the first reason I'd give is that it's easier to be accountable to your community. For instance, if you're part of a giving, if you're taking in giving from the community, like individual donations, on a tool such as, I'd say, Mchanga, it's quite easy for you to, and for the non-Kenyans, Mchanga is a digital giving platform where you can give via mobile money to an initiative or to an organization. So it's easy for you to be accountable to the people who've given to you, because automatically it sort of, you can create a feedback mechanism where the people who give to you get reports on how much you've raised. And also you can, using technology, you can even give feedback on how you've spent the money. So I would say that yes, the digital environment is definitely increasing or improving the way that organizations can be accountable to the people who they serve.
Thank you so much. I think that is very important. Those are questions that we get to ask ourselves, to say, is it safe to move and to do these things online? Is it trustworthy? Because I believe that I also talk more about stokvels in South Africa, and what we grew up seeing in our villages, to say those were built in trust. Those people trusted each other, and that's why those things still outlive them even in this era. And as we try to embrace technology, is it something that trust, is it still at the center of it? So thank you so much for that important contribution. I will move to you, Kelechi, to say, from a builder's perspective, or someone who has founded something, what are some of the changes that you have seen or observed in how people mobilize resources and support these courses online? You're muted.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things that founders do not do when they want to reach out to organizations, sometimes they don't really know you, but they want to support what you are doing. They go online, they search. We built a solution for an NGO, I think in 2019. And then someone reached out to a person in the UK, and the person needed some funds. The person is in a problem of some sort. Now, the person they reached out to said, I can't fund you. The only way I can do that is to reach you through an NGO. And the person went to search for NGOs within the city of the person asking for the funds. And this NGO who pushed online, they appeared. And then from there, they were able to reach out, get information, and that was the only way they could offer help. And with the right technology, it's easy for you to be seen. We always know about grants, we always know about grants coming up, or some funders or some donors, and then we'll try to reach out to them. But sometimes some of these donors, they are the ones looking for you as an NGO. And when you're not properly positioned online, they are not going to see you, and they are going to look for the people that are present. And something I've observed for the past 2 years, since 2024, there are some philanthropy organizations that are out there. They don't even offer the solutions, but because they have the technology, they are seen the most and they get funded. And I discovered that some of them, they don't actually utilize the funds. Now, but because they are out there online, it's easy for funders to see them and to fund them. And since then, I have made it a priority to put out any organization I am working with, to put them online. That's the first things first. And there are several ways, just like Paul said. Some of them have only their social media handles, which is not bad in itself if properly handled. But then you have to go further than that. A website is a must, it's a compulsory thing, because now where the funders are coming from, that's one of the criteria, that's one of the things they are going to check. It is a must, that's one of the things they are going to check. So now with technology, we have found ways to make this affordable for organizations, because that's finance is one of the reasons why they don't go online. That's one of the reasons. So because they're going to because it's going to be affordable for them now, it makes it easy for them to be seen. And now other ways where technology can also help, apart from you creating your website, you now have your bank account. Technology makes it easy for you to be accountable, because it's one thing to receive funding, it's another to be accountable. And when you are accountable, you are open to more funding, you are open to more donors. In fact, even the people that donated earlier on, because you are accountable, they'll become more willing to push in more funds, because they know you are giving it in. And now, I don't know who mentioned on the staffing. Some of these organizations, they don't have the right number of staff it takes for them to, you receive funding, you're acting in the field, and now it becomes difficult for somebody to stay behind to handle the accountability process. But with technology, it becomes easy for you. You don't even need somebody to be at the back end. You deploy the solution as you're on the field, you are taking pictures on your phone, you're uploading, you have a system that processes this, puts it out to the website or to the emails of the donors. So they are seeing what you are doing in real time. So this way, it makes accountability easy. Accountability is not just in showing how the funds were used. You also need to show what happened in between receiving the funding, actually helping, and then the impact of the help. So these are the places where technology comes in. So in the accountability part, even when you are understaffed, technology comes in and makes some of these things easy for you. And then the communication aspect, I don't know, I don't want to say so much because I don't know the questions that will come further, but now these are the ways that technology makes it easy for you to be seen, for you to receive funding, for you to be accountable with it.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that you noticed about time, as well as you're prolonging your answers. It will also make it I will make sure that some of the questions you already answer within the long answers that you are giving, so that we cover everything. But thank you so much. I think at the center of it all is trust. And also really accountability. I like that the both of you mentioned this in one way or the other, the importance of that. And I believe it is also our responsibilities to help these organizations that are not online, especially if we see that the people that are running them are not really familiar with technologies, to see how we can help them be acquainted with this technology. So I will move to you, Emmanuel, to say among young people, yes, to you, Emmanuel, to say among young people, are we seeing entirely new forms of solidarity made through digital spaces? How does that look like from your perspective and your point of view with the work that you're doing?
Thank you so much, Shandu, for that. And thank you for my two speakers who have just traced more of, about this topic that we are doing, digital features of philanthropy in Africa. You and I can agree in one thing, that technology is here to stay. And it's either we disrupt or we become disrupted by technology. In whatever space that we are into, be it philanthropy, our businesses, in every space, the corporate, the civil space, how are we welcoming technology to become an enhancer to the work that we do? And I want to say this, that technology is not here to take. Technology is here to enhance how we do our things. Moving from time, because times have changed. And the era that we are into calls, one, for speed. Secondly, it calls for agility, how agile you are when it calls for change. Those two, and maybe to add the last, how adaptable are you when times changes? Be it an organization or an individual, at individual level, and now going back to the communities that we come from. For most of us who've been raised in maybe rural areas, you'll agree with me that most people there, they are not yet advanced to the technologies that we are using. And it is our duty between you and I to make sure that those that we live at home, we don't laugh at them. We hold them by hand, then we teach them. It's funny how today when you tell somebody to say, can you send me your ID? The first thing they say, what are you doing with my ID? They don't believe that you can hand me your ID just through the physical means. They believe that the trust that I get is when you get it, we exchange hands. That is the reality. It's not their problem. It's not a problem to be that or to believe that, because one, trust is earned. As we go on to all this, we need to know that people have to trust what we are doing with all the spaces. Whether it's, like I said, whether it's the philanthropic work that you're doing, trust to become the center of everything. It's the trust between those who give, or who gives you the money, or whatever the things that are given to you, and those who are receiving. And there are two prongs that comes to this topic. First is, how do we direct funding towards projects that leapfrog communities and urban centers? How do we direct funding towards projects that leapfrog communities and urban centers to innovate more? Because we cannot afford to catch up. I've said that we are shifting, or we need to shift, maybe reimagine the Africa that we live in as the present. So digital present now becomes the key, which comes also with the regulations of it. How are we running it? How people are being taught about this? How people are welcoming all this? And back to what we have asked in terms of how young people are embracing all this. I think the total population of Africa today is more of young people. And young people today, we have access to technology more than the generations that have passed before. But the question is, are we using it for the good? Are we using it towards the desired intentions that we have set? I've heard what Paul has said, that I think it's Paul or Mr. Kelechi, that 40% of the corporate, civil society organizations, most of them don't have access to website, or then they have website, or some of them, they have social media, but they are not utilizing it. There is more between access and utilizing. That is why when philanthropy evolved from just a traditional way of now, what Mr. Gaine have said in his, in his presentation, that, it's common here when you could get maybe 5 cows and say, no, take 2 cows for me, head them for me. You can support your family there. Once they reach a certain number, you give me maybe 1 cow. What? That has been a way of living back then. But now times have changed. When we have maybe an issue, a pressing issue that calls for us to be attended to, there are many important, platforms that people are using. The online platforms ones, social media, digital crowdfunding, all these spaces that you can think of. They've been there. They have been there for all this time. And now they are making it easier for us to do the work of philanthropy. And to buttress this, or to close this, is that even if, no matter how we speak about technology,
Oh, I think we lost Emmanuel, but I think one of the most important thing that he mentioned was how we're moving. Is it with speed, agility, and how adaptable are we? And we can see that we as young people, also to just add to what he said, we are able to adjust. We are adjusting to this technology, but how are we using this technology? Are we using it for good? Also, are we really empowering the people that are still backward in this technology, the people in our homes, the ones that we're talking about, the 40% that still doesn't have websites in that regard? So how are we really using this technology to empower each other? So I think we'll move on. This one, I will just give each and every one of you 2 minutes to answer, because I believe as you were answering, you also delve much into it, and it's 2 minutes. It means if we're exceeding that 2 minutes, I will have to disturb you as you're speaking. And also with what Kaine said throughout the conversation, to say, I think one of the most concern that comes up is that it's whether Africa is truly, truly building its own systems or simply adapting tools that are developed elsewhere. That's one conversation that even Kaine as well, he mentioned pretty much of it, but I would love to hear your thoughts in 2 minutes on this one. I will start with you, Kelechi.
Okay, one of the ways we can do this is, like I said, making it affordable for them. Now, there is an organization I'm working with here in Ghana, and what they did is they purchased a big server, and then they now made it at a token for any non-profits, especially in the rural areas, to just come pay a token to get a domain name. Now they don't have to pay the full cost of owning a website. So when they pay a token and a website, they will send in their information. A mini website will be created for them. Now, because the resources are already on ground, and then there are tech experts within the NGOs, they don't have to pay the full cost of owning websites. Now, this is what I think we can relate to Ubuntu owning together. Now, this way, where the organizations that are already well to do can fund resources, pay for resources, and then now the smaller organizations can now just pay tokens, and then they'll get their solutions built for them. Now, another way this can also be done is, apart from building it for them, is training. When training is provided for staffs and interns at organization level, it makes it easy. Now, so instead of paying for skill, instead of paying for manpower to get your organization digital tech aspect set up, you have people from in-house now working on these solutions. It makes it easy for you to get whatever solution you want to get out. And then also there are organizations like Google Workspace and okay, there is even Canva as well. They are giving out some tools for free to organizations. So now, when you know all this, or one will teach these organizations all this, they can look for these solutions themselves. For example, AWS, okay, this one is for startups, but they also do for NGOs. They give out credits to organizations. NGOs can apply for this, and with these credits, they will be able to build lasting solutions. I'm not talking about just websites, and I'm talking of real agentic solutions that can be running their day-to-day activities while they are just there on the field, focused on running the NGO. Now, with these opportunities, Canva, for example, they also have a pro plan, and then they will give it for 50 of your team members. You can use it for free, like everything in Canva, including their AI. You can use it for free as an NGO. Now, many organizations are not using this because they are not aware of it. So instead of having to pay monthly or yearly.
Sorry, Kelechi, I will need to cut you, but then we'll get back to that as we continue. And thank you so much for sharing also the tools that are very much helpful. I hope everyone else is taking note so that we also be able to use them, but also to help other people within our communities. So thank you so much. We just need to move on and respect the time. And I noticed that you've already shared some valuable information that will be helpful for us as well. So back to you, Emmanuel. We are moving on to the next question. I noticed that we lost you the last time. So the question is, are Africans' emerging philanthropic tools genuinely African built? Are they built with Africa in mind? Or are we mostly adapting imported technologies? You have 2 minutes to answer this. I think we have briefly answered it throughout this conversation.
Confirm that I'm audible that side.
Yes.
Yes, I think technology is trying to play me here, but I think we are winning.
We are digital.
All right. We are now digital. So these are some of the things that we these are practical things. When you are in the middle of the meeting, you get cut off. We need to expect that until we reach a certain, I don't know, level of connecting in Africa. It's a problem across Africa. If I may say, we are having a connection problem. But to answer this question, I think Mr. Kaine also, I'm going to reference him more because he's now my fellow citizen. He's my fellow brother here. So he spoke about all these tools, philanthropic tools, platforms that have been there. Are they designed for Africa? Were they designed in Africa in mind? And then he went to say he's not going to argue more onto that. He went on to say, it's how are we using it now? I don't know. I'm just rephrasing his question on that. I mean his answer on that. But for me, understanding all these tools, the available tools that are there, one question comes to my mind as well. One or two questions comes to my mind is that who owns the system? And then who benefits from the system? Because it's very evident that funding is there. But who is owning it? And for who? That has been the key question. Why trust, like we've been saying. The challenge now becomes, or that comes up with all this, is that dependency comes an issue. We become dependent because we've been given. Look,
I think we lost him again.
when the aid has been, has been cancelled for most African countries, that was a living experience. We are living in it now. It was a hard to transition from being aid-free to be reliant on ourselves. Yes, we've been receiving all this from these Western African, Western countries. We've been receiving. It was the issue of just receiving, not meaning that we are not able to. We are capable of. With the advancements of technology today, Africa and Africans are able to build platforms that are able to give, that we are able to receive through them. So to answer this question is that all these platforms, they've been built for us. We're just receivers of that. But it's a time now for us to start thinking of building locally platforms that are there for us, that we are able to access and question the availability and the usage of them as Africans. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I also think it adds to what Kaine was saying, that we don't own the data. And also an example that was so beautiful when he was mentioning about how Botswana, you don't really import the raw materials, the raw thing, which is something that we hope that Africa at large move towards and embrace that reality, because of course we don't really own this. I was checking all the digital platforms that we really own, even the crowdfunding platforms that exist, and I noticed that we don't really have our own, but then we are just benefiting from what already exists. So I will also want to hear the very same, but I would love to rephrase it for you, Paul, to say from the nonprofit side, do organizations have enough locally relevant tools available to them?
Thank you, Shandukani. The first thing I'd like to say, first I'd like to correct the data, that it's not 40% of organizations that do not have a website, but it's 60% that do not. Only 40% have a website presence. So that's something I wanted to correct. The second thing I'd like to say is that I don't think that we have enough African built tools for the African environment for civil society organizations. All of these tools, I would say most of the ones that I've interacted, let me not say all, most of the tools that I've interacted with that civil society organizations use are from the Western world, and they are Western owned. So when we talk about who owns the data, the reality is that we are giving the data that's going to be stored probably in a server somewhere in Norway and not on African soil. So when we ask who owns the data might be yours, but it's probably not being stored on the continent. But to build on top of what I'm saying, I would like to ask one thing. Are we really ready to build such tools for African civil society? That's the critical question that we need to ask ourselves. Are you ready to give $50 a month to build such a tool? Like, let's say, Canva, that is customized for the African environment, that is low bandwidth use, that can be operated outside the internet, that you can use in, let's say, in Zulu, in Swahili, in my mother tongue. Are we ready to give to that? And until we are able to answer yes to that question, then we'll never really own the data. Those tools will never really be African. And to wrap up, I would say that technology that is paid for by a donor and not by an African will never really be ours, because the data belongs there, and he who pays the piper really calls the tune. So until we get to the point where I can give to a group of software developers who sit in Nairobi for them to build something like a Canva for African civil society, then really the tools are not African. We're just using them.
Thank you so much. I think with all the contribution, I keep getting back to one question to say this is a rhetorical question that I would want each and every one of us to just think about it after the conversation as well. To say if we lost access tomorrow to every measure for Rain Digital Platform, would African philanthropy continue functioning effectively? I think that is a question that I would love for us to reflect on as we go on. Now, I would love for us to proceed. So sometimes innovation focuses on so much on the future that it forgets what already exists. And it brings us back, of course, to the responses that you guys were giving, telling us that what Emmanuel said, that the question should be about the present, it being the present. So my question, I will start with you, Paul, again to say, what can formal philanthropy learn from informal giving, tradition, diaspora giving, and mutual aid networks? These are already systems that we talk about when we talk about African generosity, to say they already existed even way before that. So what can they learn from all these platforms, especially the ones that already existed, that we understand as Africans?
Thank you, Shandukani. I'd like to start by giving two definitions that I think will guide my discussion. Is that philanthropy, as from the provocateur, flows downwards, but answerability is upwards. But I would like to restructure that for the African context and say that what we have is basically generosity, because it goes both ways. It goes up, it goes down. And I think that's something that formal philanthropy can learn from what we have been doing on the continent. That generosity does not need, giving does not need necessarily to go from up to down, but it can go from down to up, and even horizontally, as was mentioned earlier. Number two, when we talk about philanthropy, most of the time we're talking about giving in the context of giving to organizations. So we talk about a donor who is funding an organization that works in education. We're talking about a funder who is putting $5 million into a project that is being led by a certain organization. Maybe it's emergency response in Sudan or the sort. But I don't think that's what African philanthropy was necessarily. It was not giving to a formal structure or a formal organization that already exists. It was giving to someone who was in need without necessarily requiring that they give you back a report of what they have done. So in the past, as the provocateur mentioned, in his environment, you'd give your neighbor 3 dairy cows so that their children have milk. And you are not doing that and then asking them, how many liters of milk have my cows been producing over the last 3 months? You're not asking for an Excel sheet, asking them, how much have you fed the cow and how much have you gotten in return? So what I think formal philanthropy is learning, because we've seen the trend over the last year or two, is what has been labeled trust-based philanthropy. That someone can give to an organization, and because of the relationship that they've had in the past, assume or expect that that organization will use that money in the way that they have said that they'll use it. And when that happens, as Kelechi mentioned, when trust exists, money usually follows trust. So it's probably easier for you to get funded even more or even for a longer term once you're able to establish that trust. So the key lesson that I think formal philanthropy can learn from what we've had in Africa is trust, which is critical.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think throughout the entire conversation, we constantly get back to the term trust, trust, trust. So thank you so much for that contribution. I will move to Kelechi. Can you please, in 2 minutes, answer the very same question?
Please, can you emphasize the question again?
The question is, what can formal philanthropy learn from informal giving, tradition, diaspora giving, and mutual aid networks? Basically, what can they learn from what already exists? When we talk about African generosity, we already have this practice in our own form. So how can this new trends and this new concept of philanthropy learn from what already exists, especially here in the African concept?
Okay, I'll say one thing, empathy. They should learn empathy because that's the mother of philanthropy itself. Because so many formal organizations, they give, there are some of them, they give because they just want to avoid taxation, and then in the long run it's just about pushing the money, show it on the books that something has happened. But then when empathy is involved, now it will no longer be just giving. You can also give and then follow it through, because some organizations, when they receive funding, they get overwhelmed on how to actually distribute, disperse. But when they have the support of the donor, it makes it easy for them to handle the funds. It makes it easy for them because now they're into the giving. They are not just disbursing the money, they're into the giving. In fact, they can get to see more problems that they've not seen at the point of distributing or donating. So one thing I will say they learn is empathy. This supersedes whatever whatsoever other reason you are giving out funding from, or you are in an organization for.
That is powerful. Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing the concept of empathy, because I think a lot of times, as you're saying, people are not giving for the right reason. Well, they could be making sense in the business concept, the foundation concept, and maybe that is why we used to think that concept philanthropy is for the wealthy. It is far-fetched. It is not something that we can relate with. So thank you so much. Emmanuel, if you could also answer the very same question in 2 minutes. I'm not sure if you were here when I asked the question.
All right. No, thank you so much. I think I got the question, though I was in and out.
Yeah.
But one thing, as a systems person, one thing that I always say that systems need people to drive them. The same goes to philanthropy or the formal philanthropy. There are existing ways that have been there, that we found them already on the ground. All we need is to capitalize on that. And we should never forget that people remain the driving force. Now technology comes to scale the impact of what we've already been doing. We shouldn't focus on just giving. On the platforms, the technologies that we bring on or that we bring forward, and we forget people, whether those who are driving that or those who are receiving at the other end. So at the back of it all, one thing that we formal philanthropy can learn from those in the diaspora, or the traditional one, is that people should remain the driving force. Let people drive. Let it be people driven. That is when you can understand, or you can have a clear meaning of why we are giving, of why are we calling ourselves, a civil society. The core mission of it. What is it that we are doing, and why are we doing that? Now technology will come as a supporter of the work that you're already on the ground. So I think those are the key things that maybe moving forward, we need to bring into our mind and say, are we bringing people together with us? Are we including people within all the systems that we are doing or that we are placing forward? If not, we are now doing something else. We are not doing it for the people, but only for ourselves. That is why it's easy now. When whatever you're doing is not rooted in people, it's easy when you are given money, when you are being donated, you can maybe take part of it for your own individual benefit, because there is no accountability. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we'll need to. And a conclusion from the three of you, if there's anything we all need to get, is that trust, empathy, and people at the center. So thank you so much. I want to believe that alone is an entire blueprint of lessons. So thank you so much. We'll be moving on to the next. Technology promises efficiency. I think we have seen how AI and how it has really simplified our work. But efficiency and empowerment are not always the same thing. I think we have really touched on this concept. So I would love to ask the three of you this very important question. And again, you have 2 minutes to answer. Does the digitalization of philanthropy empower young African communities towards greater autonomy, or does it risk creating new dependencies? I think Emmanuel or one of you briefly mentioned about the concept of dependency. So of course, you will just need to add a bit in this conversation. I will start with you, Emmanuel, 2 minutes.
Thank you so much for that. I would also just try to be quick on that because I think we've been adding on to it time and again onto these questions. Technology, like I say, is emerged as a tool for impact. Now it has brought a new thinking for young African philanthropists now to start thinking of, if we are not yet there, it's a time for us now to start reimagining Africa, or platforms that are built for Africa and platforms that are built for Africans, where there's no data dependency in other platforms. There's no AI dependency. Of course, we can rely onto it, but there should be a limited means or way of depending on that. Then the system dependency, and lastly, the payment dependency, which has been a very challenge for most of us who enter this space. For instance, I'm into writing. It becomes a problem now when I'm being paid for my books, maybe through Amazon platforms. Because we rely on these platforms, payments have to go through those links, and then you take time to receive all that. But we need to reimagine all that. So through technology, philanthropy and the way it's been done, if we have seen a growth or a better margin in terms of how people are adopting it, in terms of how people are starting to embrace it. So it's a time now to start now to say, what can we build that is built for us? Through the aid of technology. Because we are into it, we are living technology. We have to be part of it. We have to allow it to be part of our journey. So are we ready for that? That is the question that I think should come to at the back of our mind as we try to answer this question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Even for our attendees here, if you're someone who's still being resistant about embracing AI, embracing technology, I think this is your time to do that exact thing. So thank you so much, Emmanuel, for that contribution. I will move to you, Kelechi. Can you please answer the very same question? You're muted. 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah. AI can actually make things easy, and the truth is not going to make it worse if handled properly. Now, what I think we should be focused on is building it around our needs, because AI adoption is one thing, and then using it effectively for ourselves, just like you said, is one thing to adopt, and then it's another for it to be efficient. Now, in using it, we build for ourselves. And that brings us back to the question where we said, can we actually own the technology? Can we actually build? Yes, we can. And we'll have the manpower, we'll have the skill, we'll have the knowledge. Maybe it will require some funding, but then we can build it. And now when we build a technology around our actions, around our activities, now it's no longer dependency. It's now helping us to be efficient in carrying out our activities. Just like this call we're making, we can build a solution which we've already done something with is running. We can build a solution that will just attend to our meetings. We can remove out features we don't need. Now we focus on just what we need, and that way technology AI will just be to our own benefit without causing any trouble of some sort.
Thank you so much. You stick exactly to 2 minutes. As you're speaking, I'm just imagining you that you have an idea of this new technology and this new tools that we need to build. So I will be looking forward to what you can build towards this. So thank you so much. We'll move to you, Paul. You also have 2 minutes to answer this question.
Thank you, thank you. I would like to agree with what Kelechi has said, that technology serves to make us more efficient, and then go back to what, as civil society, we set out to do from the very initial stage, which is to serve our communities and to protect human rights, which I think is the main goal of civil society from the very beginning. So with this in mind, technology can only enhance what we do. I don't think we can become too dependent on technology. And why do I say this? I'm a key proponent, I'm a key supporter of individual giving to civil society organizations. I think we need to be less dependent on donor funding. And if your organization is not known by the people who live down the street, then there's a huge problem. So if global giving goes down today and you can no longer get funding for your work, then there is a huge problem, because that means that the communities that you serve, because you do not serve the people who probably give to that organization on global giving. So if global giving is down and there's a funding issue with your organization, then it means that you are probably not as community rooted as you should be.
Yeah.
So with this in mind, all these technologies that we're talking about, whether it's a giving platform, whether it's social media, whether it's Canva to enable you create better designs, they can only serve to enhance your work. Use of tools such as AI it's absolute. It's like magic. I like to say, it has made us more efficient. It has made us more productive. So in this case, I can only say that technology can make us. It has enhanced our work. It has made us more efficient, and I don't think there is something as using a bit too much technology, especially if you're serving your community.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's why I really believe so much in such conversations, because you get to be in the minds of young people that are actually doing their work and see the gap that still needs to be filled. So thank you so much for the work that you've been observing in the area and the field that you're in. And it's good that you're observing and noticing that gap. Then there's an opportunity to be the solution and to see what can be done better. So thank you so much. Now we'll be moving to the final roundup from the three of you to say. I would love for you guys to give us a different ending, to say, to end with a future forecast question. Imagine we're having this conversation again in 2035, and hopefully physically, not digitally. What would success look like for African philanthropy? What would need to be true for you to say, yeah, we really got it right from this conversation that we're saying, and we're in 2035 to sit there and say we got it right. So I want you guys to give us that picture in at least 1 minute. Thank you. I will start with you, Paul.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been great having this conversation. When we have this conversation in person in 2035, I would say, number one, we have African-built, African-owned, and African-run technology that is serving the sector and that is running philanthropy on the continent. Number two, I'll be very brief. There is a higher number of organizations that are depending on their own communities, on individual giving, and less of them dependent on donor funding that is coming from the Western world. That is it.
Thank you so much. And that adds to a conversation I had yesterday to say we need to build our very own systems. So I'm looking forward to those systems in 2035. Back to you, Emmanuel.
The future is now. This is the time where we are imagining Africa. So the African philanthropy platform that we need starts today. So 2035, if you are to have this conversation again, I'm imagining African philanthropy which is African-centered, built for Africa, and it's people-centered, built for the people. Those are the two things that I think I carry myself with. People-centeredness has been one of the things that, are very close to my heart. I believe when you do it for the people. Because if you can lift one person, the whole community is lifted. That is the Africa that we need. Make it simple. It shouldn't be a hard thing for me to, get access to this. Make it simple for us. That is the Africa that we need. And these are the platforms that we need to be building for Africans. And we are capable of doing that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate people who are people-centered and are of service. So thank you so much. To you, Kelechi.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this session, and if we're having it again in 2035, this is the future I see. A future where we export our technology. Now, we're going to be exemplary when it comes to philanthropy and digitization. Now, I'm seeing us doing what organizations have not been doing, creating technologies and people the way other organizations are not doing it so far. We own the technology, we own the people, we own the systems. So now when we talk philanthropy in Africa, everything exists in one ecosystem that you cannot separate. So now we will now become example to other continents to emulate when they are looking at philanthropy. That way you cannot separate people, you cannot separate empathy from technology, everything coexists as one.
Thank you. That was actually powerful. I love the picture that you have all created for us, and I'm definitely looking for this in 2035. I'm thinking 2035 is actually a bit far with all the ideas and the energy that you guys have. I want to believe that will actually be sooner than 2035. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us. I believe that today's conversation reminds us that technology itself is neither a solution nor a challenge. What matters is how we choose to use it. You heard it. We need to be the trust, the empathy, and being people-centered. So those are things that still matter in African generosity. Technology is here to help us reshape that. It's here to help us be more effective in how we are giving. So I'm looking forward to what this conversation will turn out to be. And thank you so much for adding into this conversation, for all the work that you're doing in your personal times. I do hope that we get to connect, and I would love to see what more that you are building, but also to see what the team, the AYPN team, is going to use this information for. Because for me, this is an entire blueprint of what African philanthropy can become. So thank you so much. Back to you, Michael. I don't know if it's still here. You're muted.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Shukundani. That was one hell of an interesting conversation that we had. And when we sit down and reflect on technology, small things are becoming tangible. And, and these are conversations that are not being held anywhere else other than this roundtable conversation on the next architecture of philanthropy. This has been the 7th out of 8 in our series. Finally, guys, we are getting to finish the series, and we cannot wait to compile all the feedback that we've gotten into one. Next week's session is going to be on the next architecture, and you guys, you should not miss out on this one. It's going to be big, and I don't want to spoil it before we take it over. So thank you once again, and I'd like to connect with you in person, online, and make sure to subscribe to all our pages on social media, and let's keep the conversation burning beyond this roundtable. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good